Mr. Daily Mile, Brock Kelly, welcome to the Running Effect podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
Dude, so happy to be here.
It's funny, I should have checked this before recording. I can actually look right now, but I think we probably talked, man, I'm trying to think. Let's see. We talked, longer than I would have thought. October 23rd, 2023. This was before the Daily Mile even started. I think you started it maybe like just after that or maybe just before that. How crazy is it?
I can't remember because I was like, I can't remember if I had already started and we kind of talked about it a little bit and just what I was doing. I don't know if I had started, I probably wasn't calling it the Daily Mile at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just kind of an odd time period just because of all of the injury and everything that was popping up. I think that's probably what we talked about last time we were on here, and it was the injury and just trying to figure out, okay, how do I navigate the ups and downs of like having such a great summer and then having that injury happen, and like what's the next step forward. And then the next step forward ultimately ended up being, I guess, the Daily Mile and everything that brought forth, which was kind of sick.
Right. I mean, I think you're like a completely different person, as I'm talking to you 10 months later. What's it like to reflect on the progress of these past 10 months and just like how much your life has changed? I mean, it's very similar, but things have changed,
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is just there's definitely been some changes, but so much of it is just all the consistency that I was practicing on YouTube and all the different videography skills that I was building up over the course of 5, 6, 7 years. I don't know how long I've been doing video stuff, probably 6 years. That course of 6 years, I learned so much valuable information, and then to be able to apply that to short form videos and just consistently putting out content, learning how to do that made it to where that series did super well. And now it's kind of like, okay, I was able to create a platform, create something that provided value to the audience in a way that I don't think anybody had ever really done before. And that was kind of just a cool experience, just being able to have that culmination of things. Everything just kind of came together in one big conglomeration of like, okay, here's the series that I'm doing right now. And it was kind of just weird how it all fell into place. But now I feel like I've learned a lot about making short form videos. I've learned a lot about making that short content, the Daily Mile and everything. And it was just a cool experience. It's been a cool experience over the last year. And just, I feel like I've learned a lot about video creation, a lot about social media, and a lot about what clicks and what doesn't click. I still haven't figured out TikTok yet, but
I don't think anyone has. Weird algorithm.
It's just
I'm
a weird
curious.
algorithm. It's all viral is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't make viral content, so
you need to like do more challenges in Walmart, I think, to get better on TikTok, which is probably not your cup of tea, nor is it mine.
No.
So last time when we talked in October, I remember, we discussed kind of your evolution on YouTube and the recent growth of the channel. And I remember sharing with you then, I think the first video I came across which was the first video many people came across, training to run 100 miles in a week. And I remember even at that point, you were like, I've been around for quite some time. It's slowly starting to pick up some steam. I remember watching that video, lived in Austin, Texas, shot you a DM and was like, hey, great work. Keep it up. This is ridiculous.
Yes.
Like, we need more content like this. I remember you had, I think, like 3.9K on Insta.
Probably.
I think you're at 70K today. Just absolutely wild year to year. But now I feel like even as we're talking, I'm pretty confident with your consistency and just, creativeness. If we talk in 10 months, it's going to be the same conversation of, oh my gosh, you're only at 70K. What's that reflection process like?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the weird balance between figuring out, am I going to do YouTube or am I going to do Instagram, and trying to figure out what I'm going to focus on. So it's like on Instagram right now, it's 70K, but then we look on YouTube and it's like 17K. And I'm going back and forth. Like, it's like, I'll have these streaks where I'm like, okay, I'm going to make YouTube videos for like 4 months straight. And then I'm going to make Instagram content for like 4 months straight. And then YouTube and Instagram, YouTube, Instagram. It's kind of like you're going back and forth almost. And it's, I don't know if I'm necessarily at a point where I could like hire a team to help edit and stuff, but it's getting kind of complicated. And I'm like, let me see how I can balance all of this, because it's like, there's only so much creative bandwidth that I have. And if I'm making a video every day on Instagram, I don't have the creative bandwidth to also make YouTube videos, which becomes kind of complicated. So it's almost like I've developed this format. I've developed this thing where I'm posting a video pretty much every day. And because I'm editing and posting a video every day, it's like, it's hard to bounce back and also post a YouTube video that it's just hard to be creative for for that much time in a day. And that's kind of something I'm struggling with right now. But it's been cool to kind of see everything. It's trying to figure out how to balance all of the different things that go along with Instagram and YouTube and just creating content. And you kind of know the way it goes. And I mean, you've done really well on Instagram this past year. It's just been crazy watching your growth and everything too.
I think something that's really cool, is so many people have a setback, and they go dark on they go rogue on Strava and Instagram, and I would say, maybe for lack of a better way of framing it, you monetized a setback, and that's kind of what
Yeah.
what gave you the kick you needed. Where do you think that mindset comes from? Of like, okay, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to help people who are in the same boat, but I also think a big part of your mindset is like, document this unique journey for my future self of how I overcame this setback in my career.
Yeah, I'm not really. I feel like I've always just kind of thought about that. I've never like, I've always been that type of person that whenever I end up in a bad situation, or whenever I end up in a situation that I don't think is going well, it's if there's an injury, if there's something that's going on, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't going the way that I want it to go, then it's like, okay, well, what can I do about it? And it's just looking at the variables that I can control, and it's like, well, I can't necessarily make YouTube videos about running right now. That was the dilemma that I had. I was like, all summer I was making YouTube videos about running super high mileage. Like you saw the 100-mile week video, you saw all that stuff. I'm making all these videos all summer, and then I realized, okay, wait, I'm at a roadblock because I can't make these videos anymore because now I have a stress fracture. I'm not running at all. And so am I going to document my swims at the pool on YouTube? And am I going to do like a YouTube vlog series, or what am I going to do with this? And I was kind of just at this dead end. And I still enjoy the creative aspect of creating videos. So I just started making videos, and I was just making Instagram videos. I'd watched like a few other guys that had made like voiceover type Instagram videos. And one of my friends, Stephen Covert, he's like a bodybuilder, weightlifter. I'm not sure if you've seen his stuff. You've probably seen his stuff. You may just not know it. But
Okay.
dude, he does like a really good job. His voice is like amazing on whenever you
Got
hear
like
him
a
speaking.
Morgan Freeman voice.
Dude, it's so sick. And I like saw his videos, and I was like, oh, that's a sick format. I'm gonna try to do something kind of like that. And then I just kind of like started making videos that were creative in that way, and just they messing with color grading and messing with all sorts of stuff. And the next thing I knew, the Daily Mile was kind of born out of that, where it was almost like, okay, I'm bored, I'm gonna make a video every day just to see how it goes. And I thought about doing it for 7 days whenever I first started. Then I thought about doing it for like 21 days. And then next thing I knew, it was like I was 30 days in, and I was like, I think I'm going to quit at 30. That's a month. And then I was talking to like my girlfriend and a few other people who had been watching the videos. Cause at this point, none
You
of the
told me
videos.
50.
Yeah. At this point, dude, nothing had been going according to plan. And like I hadn't, none of the videos had blown up. Nothing was going on. And I was like, dude, I don't know why am I even making these videos anymore? But then like my girlfriend and one of her friends were like, dude, everybody loves those videos. They're just not popping off right now, but just keep making them. Like they're super cool to see that like every day. And especially like a lot of people on campus would watch it. And I didn't even realize that. I just was like, oh yeah, but some people are watching it sometimes. And I just kind of kept making them. And then I made it to 44 or something. And I was just like ready to quit. I was like, I'm not going to make it to 50. There's just no way. I'm just like exhausted. This isn't going to happen. And then I said, well, I'm going to push. I'll make 45. And then like 45 popped off. Got like 120,000 views. And I was like, oh, shoot, this hasn't happened before. And then like some of the other videos started getting views. And then because it was so consistent, it was like every video was like 100K for a few days pretty much. And it was like some of the videos would have less and it'd be like 30K, but some would have more and it'd be like 500,000 or 800,000. And then eventually, like once I got to like January, I had that one video that popped off of my friend getting married, and that had like 1.4 million. And that was just like, what's going on? And all these people were commenting and getting all these followers. And it was just insane to see this because I'd never experienced anything like that. But I knew specifically with the format that I was creating with the Daily Mile that it was going to be people were going to follow me for like who I was and what I was doing versus like, or more so just who I was versus what I was doing. So it was like, it's cool to have people following you for like, oh yeah, I'm the guy that runs 100 miles a week or whatever. But how long does that last? I run 100 miles a week for like a week, or for like 1 week, or for like 12 weeks or whatever that length is. And then they just remember me as this guy that ran 100 miles a week. And like, it's kind of like, okay, that's cool, but how can you provide value to those people? How can the people who are watching the videos walk away and be like, oh, that was that guy that talked about that one thing that really helped me in my run. It really helped me like understand racing better. It really helped me understand training better. And that was what I was trying to create. And I knew that if one of the videos popped off, that people would latch on to the fact that I was almost like a teacher of sorts. It was like people would latch on to the fact that they could tune in the videos and potentially learn something new or start thinking about something they hadn't thought about before. And it was just kind of like intellectual stimulation in a way. And that was just something that I knew if I could provide value in a short form video like that, that people would follow me for who I was, not what I was doing necessarily.
On December 26th, I'm kind of filling out more of the story here. You DM'd me and you said, only took me 46 videos to start gaining traction. Wanted to stop at 47. Reassessed and
Yeah,
kept
yeah,
going. Interested to see where this series goes from here. And then
yeah.
I'm proud of my reply because I think it was spot on. I said, an overnight breakthrough takes 1,000 nights in the dark. Putting in the reps that no one sees is necessary to experience that breakthrough. I'm confident that
Mm-hmm.
if you stick with it, that traction will be considered the norm, which I think is
Yeah.
exactly what has happened. What's it like to reflect on December 26th, those feelings?
Yeah, I mean, that was the exact thing I was talking about. It was like episode 46. It was that was the one. It was like 45. I made it there and I was like, I want to quit. And then 46, I was like, oh, wait, that one popped off. All right, let's keep going. It gave me like a little boost of motivation because I hadn't seen any of that for 46 days. And it was also like this long game in my mind because I remember I'd watched like a podcast episode. You know the guy that does like the house tours where he'll
Mhm.
like walk up to people and he's like, "Oh, can I see like your house? Will you give me a tour of your house?" Well, I kind of experienced like I was watching a podcast episode and he was talking about his journey and they were like, "Oh, like where'd you start? Like what did you start doing?" He was like, "Well, I wasn't doing house tours." And eventually it kind of like started picking up a little bit and then I just kind of kept making these videos, but none of it happened overnight. It was this long process. It took me a year and a half to figure it out to actually have like one video do well. And I'm sitting here like 20 episodes in and I'm like, dude, this is going to take a year and a half. This is going to be insane. And I was just, my mind was like, no, I want to quit so bad right now. Like that, why would I want to why would I want to just keep making these videos over and over again for the next year and a half, having like no traction? And I think I just had faith in my video editing capabilities and my creative capabilities and the knowledge that I had on running that I was like, if I can get one of these videos to pop off, people will start to notice some. And so that was just kind of the goal. It was like, how can we make good quality videos that people are going to enjoy, people are going to comment on, people are going to like? And pretty soon it just started. It was just kind of a natural thing, especially after episode 46, after that one hit, it was like, okay. And then some of the older videos started getting views too. There were some videos that only had maybe like 5,000 views that went up to like 300,000 overnight. And it was just like, why is this random video popping up? Why are people finding this video? So you can go back and you can like look at some of the early episodes and like some of them have like crazy amounts of views because Instagram decided to push it out randomly after like 46 popped off. But it's just weird how all the algorithms work and everything. It's a weird age that we live in.
Something you mentioned a minute ago that I want to talk about more is the aspect of, making sure you were documenting yourself as the person and pitching that rather than just like the concept of the daily mile or running 100 miles a week or coming back from an injury. And I feel like there were turning points within that. You mentioned that video of your friend's wedding that went pretty viral. And I think at face value, like
Mhm.
I'd be curious to get your take on this. If you say, I'm going to make a video about, my really close friend's wedding to my running community, you wouldn't think it would do well.
Yeah,
But I think
yeah.
regardless, even if it didn't do super well, what it does is build out like who Brock Kelly is when he's not wearing, his Adidas or
When he's
his
not
Adidas
running.
shoes going for a run. Exactly. How
Exactly.
important do you think that was in that process of, not just showing your training and what ultimately started as a daily mile in the pool, but ultimately
Hmm.
everything else that went on in your day. So now, like, dude, you could probably pivot outside of running and you have enough of an
Yeah,
audience that it's probably going to stick with you, which is the key and
that was a
something
big
so many people struggle with.
that was a huge confidence booster whenever that video took off because I was like, there's not any running in this video. So I know that I have the capability, I have the capacity to make videos that can do well outside of the sphere of running. And I haven't done that yet. Like I'm still like I'm running all the time, so it just makes more sense to make videos about running right now. But it's like if I ever want to pivot, I can move out of that in the same way like Ryan Trahan pivoted because he used to make like he made running videos and then he started making like commentary and then he started shifting into like the stuff that he's doing now with just like the random challenges and like touring hotels and whatever the heck he's doing. But he's doing random stuff, but he figured out how to pivot, and that's like such a valuable thing, and it's something that I think I can do at some point. But like for now, I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm still here, I'm still in the sphere. It doesn't make sense to pivot. It doesn't make sense to like shift away from running while I'm still running. But it was a big confidence booster because it made me realize, okay, I can make content that's not just about running, but people will still enjoy. And there's just value in things outside of running, and I think every runner kind of inherently knows that. Like they know that there's value outside of running. They know that there's things they can enjoy that's outside of running. And I think you have to if you're going to be a good runner. Like you can't just be like constantly 100% like all running all the time. You'll have no life, and then what's the point? Like even if you win a championship, it's like okay, this is all that it was, and you don't have anything else. And like I think you have to be a little bit of a diversified portfolio, but ultimately whenever I finish up running, whenever that ends up being, it's like okay, I think I can shift from into something else, and it may be like running marathons, or it may be like oh, I'm gonna start weightlifting, or oh, I'm gonna do something else. I'm gonna start friggin' water skiing. I don't know, just something random.
Here for
But
the water skiing channel for sure.
yeah, that'd be crazy.
Pivot of the century.
Yeah,
Trahan did it. Levitt did it. Yours is water skiing.
water skiing.
I want to
Yeah.
share. I want to get your thought on a quote my mentor shared with me. I think last year, because we talk about these subjects a good amount over the phone, uh, and he's by no means like into influencing. His name's Alex Osberg. A lot of listeners know this. He's the assistant coach at Bowerman, so more
Okay,
the
that's
running
cool.
perspective, but he has a lot of like philosophical thoughts. And so I think the subject on the phone was we were just talking about how kind of to this conversation, people something will do well and then people will only make content about that version of themselves, and then it will become exhausting putting up that face because it's not actually them. And to be honest, like I don't know Zach and Ryan super well, but that is a trap I know both of them fell into. Is they had something
Hmm.
do really really well. Like for Zach, it was like running content did really really well, but you could tell he didn't want to do it, and it just became absolutely exhausting. And so we were talking about this. He's like, I've got the perfect quote for you. So the quote he sent over that I want to get your take on, he said, social media influencers often find it fun and exciting at first, but then their entire lives become commercializing their identity on a personality marketplace. For most, but not all, professional influencing ends with emptiness and misery. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a trap you can fall into. You can pigeonhole yourself so easily into just like, oh, I'm just gonna make daily mile videos the rest of my life. I could be like, oh, I'm just gonna make these running videos the rest of my life because that's what does well. And it's just like you have to you it's such a shallow confidence in your abilities whenever you do that. And I think that what ends up happening is it's the same. It goes the same with musicians, whatever age, or even like TV stars, like child actors. Whenever they get famous, that's the age that they like stay at for the rest of their life. It's like whenever musicians get famous, if they get famous at 16, they make songs for 16-year-olds for the rest of their life for the most part. Like that's just kind of how it goes. That's like a theme that you see in the music industry. It's a theme that you see in like acting and things like that. It's like whatever age they get famous, they oftentimes adhere to that same age. I don't remember where I saw that, but I was like reading an article about it one time. Uh, and I think it can be the exact same with content creation. It's like whatever makes you famous, whatever is the thing that takes you off, it's so devastatingly difficult to go from being on top of the world, making this specific type of content, making this specific video that's always doing well, to being like, no, I'm going to shift and I'm going to make a video about my friend's wedding. And it's like something that just doesn't even go at all with what you're doing. And I think it's like one of the things about the Daily Mile is it's never going to be just about running. I like to talk about running sometimes. Like that's what I talk about a lot of the times, but it ends up being sometimes it's just more. Sometimes it's like, dude, I just want to hang out with my friends today. Like that's what I did today. I ran some, but that doesn't matter. Like I just went and I was hanging out with my friends, and there's not like one specific format, I guess. But yeah, I definitely think it's a trap that people can fall into where they just kind of feel like it's like, oh, well, I have to make these types of videos the rest of my life, and because I have to make these types of videos the rest of my life, it's just going to be so exhausting trying to do this. And I I think that's whenever it becomes more of like, hey, I'm catering this specifically to an algorithm as opposed to creating art. Um, because an artist doesn't get bored. An artist doesn't get burnt out necessarily because they're making art. They're making things that are different. They're like constantly trying to expand their horizons to create something new. But creators who are trying to engineer videos to specifically meet the algorithm that or specifically meet the type of content that people have been enjoying, or the algorithm or whatever it ends up being, specifically trying to engineer these videos to do that, will definitely get burned out because they've just pigeonholed themselves into a specific type of video, a specific format, a specific thing that does well. And it's like, yeah, you can do that for like a year maybe, but then what are you going to do after that? Like, you got to figure out something else. You got to make art with your videos, and then that's so much of what happens. Like, you aren't necessarily going to get burnt out. I guess you could potentially like use up so much creative bandwidth over a period of time where you are burnt out just creatively, and you kind of need to take a step back and consume. But I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts on it.
Could you speak to the listener in terms of, and I think this is prevalent in like if you're the listener, anyone you look up to, I think has some similar version to what I'm about to say, to what Brock's about to say. For me, it took me, I think, 2.5 years creating podcasts to see any sort of really tangible growth. I think it was also 2.5 years in when I got any sort of monetary benefit. And I think it was a couple $100s, which to a kid in high school was fantastic. I was like, oh my
It's
gosh,
huge.
I never thought I could make money from doing
Yeah,
this. For you, we've definitely chronicled that in this podcast and our last podcast with each other. I mean, you were creating videos for years, even the Daily Mile. It took you 46 days of like significant work. It's not like
yeah,
day 46 you were like, today I'm going to put in some more effort. It
yeah.
was
No,
very
it was like
consistent over time.
2 to 3 hours a day editing, pretty much.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
you multiply that to like 100 hours of editing that I was doing to
With
make these videos, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, dude, I've been editing for 100 hours and haven't seen anything, and it's just maybe I'm just
exactly.
impatient, but
So to that point, what would you say to a listener who, honestly, one of my like proudest things of the podcast is I know other kids that have started podcasts because of listening to this. I'm sure you have examples of people creating stuff because they're inspired by you. I think that's
Mhm,
like the ultimate mark of a creator. But to that point, I think they all come across this path where they're like not quite where you are and they want to be there, but they don't
mhm.
really like, people don't talk about the period where you're not seeing any sort of growth. And I'll end this kind of question rant. I was reading about the bamboo tree last year, and I think it's very applicable to this. And the bamboo spends its first 5 years growing under the earth, and then within 5 weeks, it shoots 90 yards into the sky. That's the
That's
Daily
wild.
Mile right there.
Yeah, that's it right there.
What's your take on that? Speaking to the
So,
listener who's not seeing growth.
so whenever I was making videos, whenever I first started, there was zero growth. It was kind of funny because I, the first videos I made were, I think we've talked about this before. We talked about it last time we were making videos, but I would just bring the camera along to track meets. Last time we recorded, I think we talked about this, but I'd bring the cameras to track meets, and then I would make YouTube videos, YouTube vlogs. They're still up on the channel. I think they're not good, but it was like, hey, dude, I'm making videos. This is fun, and I just learned how to edit on this like old Toshiba computer and trying to like navigate all this. And I remember watching, like we were talking about, like Ryan Trahan and Zach Levitt. I remember looking at like Zach Levitt's videos and like looking at like his first video ever, and it has like 200,000 views, and I'm like, dude, what? I'm like, why does this video have like 200,000 views? His first video ever. This dude got like so lucky. Like, how did he do this? And like, I'm sitting here like comparing what I'm doing to what he's doing, and I'm just like, dude, like, wow, how do I? What does it take to like get to this level? And it was so like discouraging because I would just make videos and just keep making them and keep trying to like improve what I was doing, and it it never really paid off in the first 5 years. But it was a creative outlet, like I said. It was art. It was things that I was. It was nobody was making videos like I was making. I wasn't just making like regular running videos, just throwing like crazy edits into them, just learning as much as I could, like watching old like travel vlogs and things and being like, dude, well, how do they do that transition. I want to try to do that transition in a running video. How can I apply this to here? And I think one of the biggest things that I learned was just one one of the most important things I learned whenever I was creating videos early on was I would watch somebody's video and I'd be like, how can I replicate this exactly? Like, how can I replicate exactly what they did? And I would film some stuff, I would edit it, and then I was like, oh, well, that's how they did this transition. That's how they did this edit. That's how they did this. And I would like, okay, that makes sense. That's what this sound is. And I kind of like walked through what they were doing, and then once you break it down, once you watch somebody's video 5, 6 times, it's not as it feels pretty simple to make. And I kind of learned that way. And so I like took like all these different creators. I was like, well, how can I make a video like this guy? How can I make a video like this guy and this guy and this guy? And so I took 10 different creators and I'm making videos identical to what they're making. And then ultimately I took all the different pieces that I really liked from the different creators that I watched and combined them into one style. And that's like my own style. That's how you steal like an artist. That's what it takes to be creative. Like the artists take influence from other people and apply it to their own. And so once I figured out kind of what other people were doing and how they were doing it, it was like, oh, well, I can apply this factor. I don't really like this that they're doing. I'll take that from over here. And it was just all these pieces that were coming together. And then ultimately, I guess last summer, whenever I was out here in Boulder, like that was like my first video that ever popped off. And I'd been making videos from 11th grade year in high school all the way through junior year in college. Lots of running videos, just having fun with it. I mean, some of them were good, some of them weren't, but they were fun and I enjoyed the process and I wasn't really expecting growth. And then it kind of happened and it was like, okay, I've been working at this for a long time. So it's kind of cool to see this. And yeah, it was just this process of figuring out how to make videos do well and studying creators and studying like Colin and Samir, those guys, listening to what they said about creating videos, listening to what they said about other creators and listening to interviews with creators on what made their videos work. And it was just being a student to video creation and learning how to make the best possible videos, but still have my own artistic flair in those videos. As that's kind of what it did. And then it popped off, I guess, at some point.
I'm curious to get your take on this thought. I don't think I've ever asked. I mean, you're kind of one of one, so these conversations honestly don't really take place in terms of like talking about creative subjects, which I absolutely love.
Mhm.
So kind of makes sense why it hasn't been brought up. But I want to get your take on this as I'm talking to you. I'm thinking about this that I started the podcast sophomore year of high school, zero qualifications. And no reality should should it turn into what it is today, and even at this point, mediocre runner in high school, went full time after high school, really have no qualifications other than the reps over the years. Similar to, I would say, like Ryan, Zach, they were never even close to best on their team, decent
No.
guys, but ultimately built these crazy platforms. I think you're in that same boat, obviously. Incredibly accomplished runner compared to 99.9%.
Mhm.
But it's just intriguing to me and there are some examples like Morgan McDonald posts occasionally on YouTube. They have a
Yeah.
podcast that does well, but like the people that do well, it seems are just like random people who actually take the action and take the steps. Why don't you think we see more like professional runners or like more qualified people, for lack of a better word? Because I think we're all qualified, but you know what I mean. Create content, and why do you
Yeah.
think a lot of times it's the people like you or me who ultimately decide to take action and
Mhm.
it takes off?
I guess it's just time consuming. It's challenging. I mean, 10 Man Elite has done a good job with all the stuff that they've been putting out over the years. I would say they're probably the best at creating content about professional running, and they've kind of existed in the sphere for a pretty long time. Um, it's just it's just time consuming and challenging, and it's another thing you have to add on to your workload throughout the week as a professional athlete. So if you're trying to train for Olympic gold and you're running all the time, you're going to be exhausted, and you don't want to use that creative bandwidth and use that mental strength and energy to make videos to document the journey because it's not easy. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons. It's the exact same reason that I wanted to quit after 40 days of making videos. of making like the Daily Mile or whatever. It was like, dude, I'm just tired right now. Like this is tough to fit into a training block while I'm trying to cross train and all this stuff and just trying to stay healthy and trying to do school and finals and all this other stuff that I have going on in life. It's just, it becomes such a challenging thing. But some athletes can do it, and some people can hire a team to film their stuff, and that's what Tin Man kind of does. They have like a team of videographers, and they have like Max McNerney, and he does a really good job with their photo, with their video, with their short form stuff, especially throughout the year when they don't have the interns on staff over the summer. He's kind of the guy that takes charge of that, and it just becomes so time consuming for a full time athlete to be able to do that. And for me, like I'm like, yeah, like I'll probably never be the best in the world. I'll never be the best in like Division 2 even. I'll never be the best in the NCAA. So I'm like, well, what can I do that I'll be good at? Like how can I share this journey and just like give other people some insight into what's going on here and how to just be a better runner and how to think about running, and how can I share my experiences in a way that provides value to them. And that's where I sit mainly. Like that's where my mind is most of the time. It's like, yeah, like I want to be good at running. I want to be really good. I want to make it to nationals and compete on that stage, but I also want to make videos, and like I don't want to sacrifice one for the other. I just want to be me, you know?
I love it. That should be the mindset, and I'll take you far. Let's talk about present day subjects. How does it feel to have one foot in front of the other these days?
Feeling pretty good. Just nice being able to run again. Trying to stay healthy, trying to keep everything maintenance good, and been lifting all the time, and I feel pretty strong. I hear you've been on the BPN, been on the BPN train over here. Talked to Tony, got you set up, huh?
Dude, I'm a believer. I had a Go Gel over the weekend, and I've had
Good.
Morton like throughout the years.
Yeah.
And so the BPN's the only other gel company that
Hmm.
Morton's the only gel company I could compare it to. And that stuff I mean, it worked. It was interesting. It was so I had the what's the flavor? The pink one, raspberry.
Yeah. It's like the mixed berry. That one's so good. It's like a
Dude,
gusher.
that stuff is sweet, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. Take it with
It was
water.
really good. It was really good. And then I've really, really liked the electrolytes. So I've worked with Element a little bit. And actually, the first ever deal was Liquid IV. It's like a
Yeah.
commission deal. And so I've worked with a bunch of electrolyte companies and just like gotten a ton over the years. And I really, really like lemon lime VPN electrolytes. So not
Dude,
to quote
lemon lime.
VPN
Have you had the
anymore, but
salted watermelon yet?
no,
Dude, that's my go-to. Salted
really.
watermelon is the go-to every time.
Speaking of BPN here, I'm assuming most people would know what it is, but if they
Yeah.
don't, they probably know who Nick Bear is. How much has a guy like that, one, inspired you, but two, like I know you've been around him at this point.
Hmm.
Uh, how much has he inspired you to get in the gym more these days? You're way
Yeah.
more built than
So,
the average runner, for sure.
dude, I appreciate that, man, and it's cool like seeing. It's definitely inspired me to just like get in the gym more. With I mean, I'm not like a huge guy, obviously. Like I'm still like a collegiate distance runner, so I'm like 160 pounds or so. So like not like a featherweight 130 guy. I'm not like not like super low, like out there really crushing the cross course. But I feel like if I can get strong, then I'll feel good. And like that's the thing with just like watching Nick's videos and watching everything that he does and everything he puts out and being around him, watching him lift at the gym with like his whole staff. So I went to Austin, Texas, right before I came to Boulder. I was out there and literally middle of the day, they're like, "Oh yeah, we got a team workout." I was like, "All right." And so we show up, and it's like literally the guys who are in finance out there like bench pressing. You're just like, dude, what is going on in
Dude,
this
Josh Hawley's a
company?
dog.
Yeah. And so it's so sick to like see that culture that he's built there, and it's just a culture of fitness. It's a culture of health. He really prioritizes just, hey, yeah, like if you're gonna spend time here, like lift and do whatever, and you'll feel good. And I think he just prioritizes the health of his employees a lot, and it's just cool to see that aspect of things, and just to watch his videos and see how he just lifts so much and then turns around and runs stupid fast in the marathon, and he just leads a healthy life, and it's just really cool. And he's been working at it for so long. Like he initially was huge into weightlifting and stuff, got huge, and then massive cut Like he lifted for like 10 years straight before he even started running, and then like just started cutting and started running and stuff, and now he's just a menace.
I feel like whether it's Nick or other BPN athletes or just like people in your everyday life, you're surrounded by such high quality, strong individuals. And I think
Hmm.
that's something that doesn't get talked about enough in terms of someone seeing your success and they wonder what goes into it. And for most people, it's like, well, they surround themselves with other champions and that's how they
Yeah.
become great. The expectation is different in your friend groups versus, the average Joe who's surrounding himself with high school kids who don't have much direction in life. What would you say in terms of how important and crucial good community is?
Well, I think the thing about community is over the years, it's been something that by making videos, by creating content, by taking that initiative and that action, like we were talking about earlier, it's like we're the guys that just take that initiative and action as opposed to like the pros. It's like taking that initiative and action puts you in a position to where you can spend time in these different communities with high achieving individuals, and you have to work for it. You have to constantly be like moving that line forward, taking that step to move in that direction as opposed to just sitting around and doing nothing. And it's easy to fall back into the trap of just sitting around and doing nothing all the time. But I don't know, man. I think the community, I think the type of people you can meet whenever you truly start to believe in what your capabilities are and truly start to push out content or truly start to do what you want to do is incredible. Like whenever you become an expert in a field, whenever you become an expert at like creating podcasts or making videos or whatever it is, like I'm speaking from a creative video, like audio space. Like that's kind of what I know. That's kind of what I'm familiar with. But whenever you start to pursue something fully and you become really invested in it, the connections that you have potential to make are just insane. And I think that's whenever you start to pursue it, like there's going to be some lonely moments, but then those lonely moments will ultimately lead to that true connection with a deep community, surrounding yourself with people who are bigger and better, and it's a cool experience to see those high achieving people and just to spend time and talk with them. And some of the best conversations I ever had are with those people. And if you can find that community, that's one of the hardest things, is just finding that community on a smaller scale before leveling up, I guess. I don't know how to describe it, but it's if you can find that community on a small scale, that's like what my friend Steven, who I was talking about at the beginning, he's found a good community of guys who are like super jacked in Richmond, Virginia. And they're like good Christian dudes. And it's like him, and he's hanging out with these guys and lifting with them all the time. And he's built this community there. And it's super cool to just see that. And I, I don't know if you don't necessarily have to go far to find good community. And that's something I'm kind of learning in this season of life too. But the more action you take, the more initiative you have, the higher the likelihood is that you will be able to attach yourself to those high achieving communities.
I don't know if you follow Chris Williamson at all. He's kind of blown up over the past
I,
year or
I know
two.
the
He
name.
he hosts Modern Wisdom, the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Super, super good. I'm not gonna share his concept as eloquently, but he's got this great concept called the lonely chapter, and I think it's applicable to what we're talking about here. Again, I'm probably gonna butcher it, but essentially what it is when you've decided you want to become a new person and have new habits and like a new standard for excellence, and it doesn't quite mesh with your current group of friends because they don't have that mindset, they're not quite there, but you're also not at that point of where you want to be that you
Yeah.
haven't really transcended to
You
that
can't level to the
next
next group.
group. Exactly. And so he calls it the lonely chapter. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's spot on, I think, for a lot of people.
That's what it felt like whenever I first started making YouTube videos. It was like nobody's doing this. That I was in the middle of like Tupelo, Mississippi, and nobody's making YouTube videos. Especially nobody's making running YouTube videos. There's barely even a running scene in Mississippi, so it's kind of like nobody's making anything. And I was like, well, this is going to be an interesting chapter in life. And there's not going to be anybody I can really talk to. I just got to watch videos, consume, and just keep moving forward and see what happens. And ultimately ended up, now I'm out in Boulder for the second summer. It's kind of chill, surrounded by a lot of runners, a lot of people who are really cool, a lot of cool connections.
Brock, if we were talking a year from today, so July 23rd, 2025, what would we
Mhm.
be celebrating?
I don't know, man. Hopefully something good. Hopefully a successful fall cross country season, successful track season, indoor and outdoor. Uh, just a good community that has been built up. At that point, I'll be probably out of school completely. I'll be done with school most likely. So I don't know what I'll be doing. Might start training for a marathon. Might be on the way to Berlin. I thought no, I don't know if I might do a world major at some point, but I don't know which one I'm gonna do. Maybe probably I might just do Chicago. That'd be a good one. That's just a good marathon. But I don't know what we'll be celebrating, man. I like to just most of the time I'm just living life one day at a time and just taking it all in and being as present as I possibly can. I think there's like a good there's that's like Michael Jordan's mentality that he had a lot of the time. He said, dude, don't what does it matter tomorrow? Like what we're focusing on today. We're focusing on right now. We're focusing on what we can do in practice here. We're focusing on what we can do in this minute of this game. He's like, what does it matter what we're doing tomorrow? He said, we'll figure that out when the time's right. And I think that dude, that's the mentality of so many successful people. Like you need to have some sort of plan, some sort of long term, like something kind of mapped out. But for the most part, dude, I'm just kind of like day at a time, figure it out, enjoy life, see what happens.
Great mindset to have. I love it. Closing out this conversation, kind of a unique way. Never done this with someone. We've talked a lot about the Daily Mile. I'm sure people listening to this podcast are introduced to you for the first time. Maybe they paused the podcast, watched a few videos, came back to it, or maybe people are planning on watching some of them after this
Yeah.
podcast, or people, I'm sure, a large listening base already knows them. But how you structure your videos is generally around like one-ish topic. And I think it'd be cool to have you elaborate on some of the main notes and topics around some of these videos. So I'll just kind of list the topic, elaborate for 30 seconds to a minute, the bullet point version, because I think some of these are just so profound and there's so
Yeah.
much depth to them. One of your ones the other day that I really loved, you said, comparison is ruining your potential.
Mm-hmm. So with that, I feel like one of the biggest things I've watched like so many different runners. I've watched my teammates struggle with this idea. They're crushing workouts. They're incredible in the workouts. They're like running times they've never run before. Amazing stuff. And then they end up at a race and they just like completely choke. And you're like, dude, what are you scared of right now? Like you've been hitting these times, you've been hitting these paces. Like stop worrying about what the other people are doing. Stop worrying about the person you're running against. Just go out there and run your best race. And like that's just one of my favorite concepts in running in general is just like stop comparing what you're doing to what other people are doing. Just like focus on what you can do right now, focus on what you can do in this moment, focus on how you can get better, and then use that energy that you've just invested into yourself to display what you can do whenever you get to a race. That dude, I love that concept so much.
Another great one. And I forget the exact video. You may have referenced this book in relation to it. Great book by Ryan Holiday called Ego is the
Oh,
Enemy.
you
You
guys,
talked a
Amy.
lot about ego. Tell me about this one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I said on that episode. I think one of the biggest things was that your ego, you don't need to be an ego runner. You need to be like, what was that? I can't remember exactly what I said. I'm trying to think back because there was one specific thing that I said. It was a ego running versus something else. And but the ego running is pretty much just whenever you're out there constantly trying to like impress other people. You're running to hit a split. You're running to hit a time to show other people that you're fast. And it's like, dude, none of that matters. Like whenever I've been out here in Colorado, I talk to the 10-man guys. I talk to other pros, and it's so cool hearing them. I'll like ask them about training, and I'm like, hey, like, what do you think about this? And what do you think about people that are always running their like recoveries fast? Like, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? And most of them are like, dude, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, why would you ever do that? Like, you have so much mental strength that you can span out over the course of a week that you need to use some of it for your workouts, and you need to like figure out how to distribute that. And so, like your easy days, your body needs to be recovering. I literally like I ran with Sam Parsons the other day. I'm gonna out him real quick. He we were out on like a recovery run, and it was kind of hot outside. It was one of those days where it got up to like 100 degrees here, and dude, we hit like mile 6 or something, and he like starts walking up the hill, and he's like, "Yeah, my heart rate got too high." He was like, "Yeah, I was running with guys back in like Italy or whatever last week, and they were, or maybe he's in France. I think he may have been in France. I don't remember where he was. He was out. He
Man
was out in
travels
Europe
all the
someplace.
time.
Yeah, he was in maybe it was Italy. And he said, yeah, I was running with guys who were like 12:55K guys, and they were literally walking up the hills so they would keep their heart rate below a certain level. And it's kind of the same thing that Jakob does. But I'm like listening to him say this, and it's like, oh, there's so much prioritization of effort. And that's one of my biggest things. And so what I see so many people doing is this. We're going on a little bit longer than 60
Go
seconds
for it.
for sure right here.
Go for
But what I see so many people doing, so many high schoolers doing, what I used to do all the time was like, oh yeah, I have to run 640 pace for my easy days, and I have to run like super fast in my workout still. And what ended up happening is by the time I got to the end of the week, or by the time I got to the end of the month, or by the time I got to the middle of the season, I would just be exhausted. And I'd be like, dude, I don't even know how I'm going to get out of bed and go and do this workout. Like, or I don't know how I'm going to get out of bed and go and do this easy run at 6:45 pace because I'm just so tired right now. And if you feel good, if you're happy whenever you're running, if you're enjoying what you're doing, then that's what matters so much more than being like physically exhausted. Because so many people have this misconception that you have to just be like balls to the wall all the time, always going, always freaking crazy, running fast, like 6 minute miles every day. And like that's like a really old school method of training. And for me, like that's never worked. And talking to most of the pros, it doesn't work for them either. So it's really listening to your body, figuring out what works. But I had there was somebody that commented on one of my videos yesterday, and it was probably like one of the same videos, and I was talking about how like running the right effort is important, and like not taking your easy days easy and taking your hard days hard is important. And this guy commented and was like, no, you just don't like working hard. And I was like, bro, I don't think you get it. Like there's like so much science backing what I'm saying, and there's so many people that do exactly what I'm saying. And if you look through the comment section, there's like I had like Leo Young commenting, I had Sam Parsons commenting, I had like all these guys that were like, oh yeah, like that's 100% right. And then this random dude out of nowhere just comments, no, like you just don't like working hard. And I'm just like, dude, you have no clue what you're talking about. And I usually don't let the comments get to me, but it's just like whenever I see somebody, and it's like I'm not going to be able to change their mind over a comment section. We'd have to have a conversation like one on one about it. But I don't know. I feel like I've been rambling for a second, so you got
No,
it.
no, that's good. I think something off of that I talked about when training for my first marathon last fall with my mentor. He was coaching me at that time, Alex Osberg. Uh, it was something that I was chewing on during a run. Brock Telly type beat. Just didn't make a video about it. And it was this concept that I think a lot of times, when you think of the word discipline, it's like, diet, running a ton of miles, being super disciplined,
Yeah,
working crazy hard. And I was like, sometimes discipline is actually doing less. And I don't think people think about that. In regards to the kid that commented that, I actually bet it would take more discipline for him to slow up and run the right effort.
yeah,
Dude, high schoolers are full of energy and they have an ego, and they
yeah,
want to impress their friends on Strava. So a lot of times it's way easier to run 7-minute pace than actually running slower. To the outsider, that
yeah.
makes no sense. They're like, how could running faster actually take less discipline? But you know what I'm
No, no, no.
talking about.
It's
I think a lot
real.
of
Yeah,
times for a type A individual, discipline is actually doing less.
it's dropping your ego, just getting rid of the ego completely, and just being like, oh no, we're gonna run the right effort today. And that was one of the things. Talking to talk to Connor. Connor, it runs for Tin Man. He's like their marathoner. Connor
Oh,
Winter.
Winters.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
Winter.
I'm talking to
One of
him,
the two.
and he was talking about how like whenever they started doing their lactic acid tests, they realized that their threshold pace wasn't actually 5 minutes, or wasn't actually 4:55, and the only person on the team that had a sub 5 minute threshold pace, which this is at altitude, but all these guys live at altitude, they're here all the time. The only person on the team that had a sub 5 threshold pace was Reed Fisher, because his VO2 max is insane. He's like their best marathoner. It makes so much sense. But like even Sam Parsons, who's 13:17 in the 5K, and Joey Barriatua, who was like crazy in the steeple, and like all these guys, even Drew Hunter doesn't have a sub 5 threshold pace. So they had to drop their ego and start running like 5:10 pace. Or I talked to Connor, and Connor said, yeah, like when I'm coming back from injury, I'm having to run like 5:30 pace for my thresholds. And then over the course of the next 4 months, I drop that pace down to 5:10, 5:05, and I can get it down to where it needs to be. but it was just like actually running true threshold is the way to improve your threshold. Because when you push past the threshold, you actually end up not doing any of the workout that you're trying to do. You don't end up improving your threshold. You end up you improve it some, but it turns into a critical velocity workout as opposed to a threshold workout, and that isn't necessarily the work you're trying to put in on the day. And uh, yeah, and that was I. There was another thing that my roommate Noah was talking about the other day. He said he was watching a old Ingebrigtsen video, and it was like all the three brothers were training, and they were trying to run 300s at threshold pace, and they were hitting 53s. And the coach what's his name, Gert, I think, whatever his name is. He was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you have to hit 53s, and Henrik like ran a 52 mid, and he just completely called the workout. Like Gert was like, no, we're not doing this. Like you're running faster than your threshold. That's not going to do it's not the work we need to put in. And I think that's where it gets a little bit too like over analytical, but it does show how much it truly matters that you're running the right effort and running the right pace and running everything according to what training stimulus you're trying to get. And I think that's where so many people get it wrong. They're like, oh yeah, like I have to run super hard on this day and I have to like go hard on the other days. And it's just everybody ends up exhausted by the end of it.
Final one for you. Overthinking and creativity do not mix.
Yeah, I've always struggled with that. Big thing with that is just so many times I'm sitting here trying to come up with the next great idea for the video. Because dude, I don't have any like video ideas saved. I literally sit down every day and I'm like, what's today's video going to be about? And that whole process it's like I pull up a Google Doc and I just start typing stuff out. And so many of the times I'm trying to create the next big thing or whatever it is. I'm trying to create a video that's going to go viral or whatever. And I start overthinking it. And I'm like, oh, it has to be perfect. It has to be like this fantastic video work. It has to be like this great idea that's so monumental and game changing. And whenever I start overthinking it, it's like, dude, I'm not getting anywhere. And the biggest thing that I can do is just say, hey, it doesn't matter. Like, just make a video, come up with an idea, just put it out there in the world. You'll put out another. If it doesn't do well, you'll put out another one tomorrow, and maybe you'll have a better idea tomorrow, and maybe you'll have a better idea 3 days from now, and just like constantly coming up with the ideas to put out a new video as often as I can. It's just like the more I overthink it, the more stressed I get, and the more I feel exhausted by the time the end of the day comes, or by the time day 40 shows up. It's like, dude, I got to stop overthinking it. Just got to make the videos, put it out, and go with it. So,
Brock, final question for you. To those who have listened to our conversation, look up to you, follow you, your wisdom that you so regularly share on a daily basis, literally. What would be the final takeaway message that you want to leave our audience today?
ooh, final takeaway message. I feel like the biggest thing, dude, one of the biggest things I like to talk about, one of the biggest things I've been talking about this whole series, like the season 2 of the Daily Mile, has just been running the right effort. Just not trying to kill it, especially in the summer. Dude, just enjoy the summers, dude. Have a good time. Go out there, run some miles. Don't stress too much about it. Get some good workouts in. Enjoy it. If you're super stressed in the summers, your season's probably not going to go according to plan. And you're going to be stressed by the time August comes around. And then who even knows what's going to happen when the championship season comes around if you're already stressed in August or already stressed in June and July. I think the biggest thing you have to focus on is just having fun with it. And the more fun you can have with it, the better athlete you're going to be. No doubt about that in my mind. That's Michael Jordan said that at one point. He was like, dude, I'm just playing the game right now. He's like, I'm working hard. I'm doing all this stuff, but dude, it's just a game to me. I'm having fun out here. And I think that's such a big thing that people miss. It's like they think it has to be so rigorous. It has to be this like everybody has a misconception of what discipline looks like we were talking about earlier. Everybody thinks it has to be so work harder, like work harder all the time. And it sometimes it's just enjoying pulling it back and just having a good time. And that's where you're going to set yourself up for the most successful season you can have, because whenever you're super stressed all the time, dude, the chances of you doing well it's just so slim. And it's okay to be stressed like before a race. It's okay to have those nerves before the race. Like everyone has those, and everyone has those before like big workouts and stuff. But if you're stressed like every day, every run you're going on, worried about how the season's going to look, worried about what everything's going to look like 150 days from now, then that'll just burn you out. Like, just have fun right now. Hit the workouts hit the right workouts, hit the right efforts whenever the time's right, and you'll end up doing well.
You've been on the podcast once before, so you answered the infamous Gordon Ramsay question. So I was
Oh yeah,
thinking, what's
peanut butter
something
and
I can
jelly
throw
was what
him?
I had last time.
I love it. So I was thinking, what's a fun question to end things off on? Best I could come up with in the 30 seconds of processing. Post run, sweaty, hot, good run, good session. Go to get a popsicle. What's the best flavor? What's the go to? Brock Kelly
Oh,
special.
dude, popsicle. Maybe I'd go grape if I had to guess. But after a run, my go-to always Coca-Cola. Dude,
Really?
I'm cracking open an ice cold Coke, down it in. Perfect in the summers.
I love it. Brock, really appreciate the conversation. Keep crushing it, and sincerely looking forward to seeing what the numbers are next time we chop it up. But more importantly, keep providing the value are. I think it's absolutely unmatched on the internet, and the success, man, you deserve it all. So keep crushing it. Keep getting those flowers. Yeah, so excited for you, man.
Oh yeah, thank you so much.